This is CBC Vancouver News.
The community land trust model is an aggregator. So you might have 30 or 40 housing co-ops under one community land trust umbrella.
The push to change BC's co-op housing model. Why some advocates say a new approach is needed to keep homes affordable. And the iconic BC Tree Fruits brand will live on after a Penticton-based construction company and Ontario apple grower buy its remaining assets. How BC farmers are reacting.
It's a devastating blow. A lot of blood, sweat, and tears went into building this organization.
Also,
it is not the Saskatoon bar, it is not the Ottawa bar, it is the Nanaimo bar.
Students at Vancouver Island University set a new record, whipping up the world's largest Nanaimo bar. Hello, I'm Janella Hamilton. Thanks for joining us. Co-op housing advocates want to see a newer housing model more widely adopted to ensure homes remain affordable. It comes as residents at one Vancouver co-op face a potential $1 million property transfer tax if their lease is renewed for more than 30 years. As Leanne Yu reports, the community land trust model aims to do away with lease renewal complications.
Here in Vancouver's River District, wave after wave of prospective residents tour a brand new housing co-op. For many young families like this one, it's a rare opportunity to be able to afford to live in an area where they would otherwise be priced out.
We are supposed to think about the budget and how to arrange money within our families to cover all the expenses, to save some money for our kids, to raise them and give good education.
There are more than 200 cooperative housing complexes in BC, offering self-governed, mixed-income communities as an option to conventional privately owned housing. The co-op housing model is a cross between renting and owning. Residents don't own the unit they live in. Rather, they pay what's called a monthly housing charge instead of rent. And they're members/owners of a nonprofit organization that owns all of the housing. This week, the Helens Court Co-op in Kitsilano raised concerns about a $1 million property transfer tax that would kick in if they renew their lease on title for more than 30 years.
I will say that we're in conversation with the province to see what kind of solution might be available.
Armstrong says moving forward, Vancouver will be building more new co-ops like this one, based on the Community Land Trust, to avoid renewal complications, at least for 99 years.
A community land trust model is an aggregator. So you might have 30 or 40 housing co-ops under one community land trust umbrella. This co-op, Sawmill Housing Co-op, will never have to worry about the property transfer tax because it has a sublease from the community land trust. And that lease is not registered on title.
There's a nice view outside here. Wow. Yeah, it's incredible.
Rochelle Vargas entered the co-op in March and considers herself lucky to have landed a unit.
I don't think that the people who live here take it for granted, that's for sure. Everyone's entitled to have safe, affordable housing where they can live a lifestyle that's conducive to their well-being.
CFHBC hopes with former Vancouver Mayor Gregor Robertson as Canada's new housing minister, the organization will be able to expand the number of co-op homes in BC. Leanne Yu, CBC News, Vancouver.
A vintage clothing shop owner in Metro Vancouver says thefts are becoming more frequent and brazen, and it's taking a toll on her small family-run business. As Shoria Chethri reports, it's part of a broader rise in retail crime across the province.
Yeah, look right behind there. Right here, it has some, right there, denim, right there.
This is where Tricia Hall spends most of her time, surrounded by vintage finds at her store in Burnaby.
Selling thrift and vintage clothing, used clothing is a chore, it's a labor of love.
Stocks Vintage opened just 6 months before COVID hit. Hall runs the stores with her husband and sons, and while the business weathered the pandemic, she says they are now facing a different challenge: theft.
So it's been progressively increasing since COVID.
This week, Hall says a man walked into her Burnaby store and walked out with a Carhartt jacket valued around $300.
We trusted him, had a nice conversation, tried to sell him as a customer, and within seconds, less than 30 seconds, he stole an expensive jacket.
RCMP confirm they are investigating the theft and say shoplifting has increased significantly in Burnaby. Last year, there were more than 3,600 shoplifting calls in that city, up 51% from 2023. In March, a two-day initiative at Metrotown led to 22 arrests and the recovery of more than $2,800 in stolen goods. Still, Hall says thefts continue and some are strikingly bold.
He puts it there, he's about to put it in his bag right now. There he goes, stealing. Because that particular guy stole it and then tried to sell it back to us in the same minute.
Hall says theft across her 3 stores have been frequent, with her Vancouver location losing $12,000 last year. She's installed more security cameras, but the added precautions come with costs. And she is not the only BC business facing growing issues with crime. Vancouver police reported a 12% increase in shoplifting last year, with a 40% spike in the city's downtown core.
There have been many businesses that have, in fact, gone out of business because of it.
In response, Vancouver City Council created a retail security task force aimed at enforcement and addressing root causes like addiction and mental illness.
So you can't just throw these people in jail and throw the key away. That's just not the right thing to do. You need a full continuum of care.
For Hall, it's about protecting a space she's poured her heart into.
It's just disheartening when people are coming in with bad intentions.
Shaurya Chetri, CBC News, Burnaby.
A 22-year-old woman has died after falling from a slack line near Squamish. RCMP say it happened Friday afternoon at Chet Canyon Recreation Area, a popular place for people to go climbing. Around noon, police were called in to help recover her body at the bottom of the canyon. Mounties say there were several people who witnessed the fatal fall. Anyone affected is being encouraged to contact victim services for support. RCMP say they have received many leads but still have no clear picture of what may have happened to a 34-year-old woman whose empty sailboat washed ashore near Nanaimo.
We arrived on scene. The sailboat there was no one on board. And evidence that there had been people there.
Police say the 10-meter boat is registered to Amber Nitchman, whose whereabouts remain unknown. The vessel was found near Bayshore Drive and Hammond Road on Thursday. Mounties say they are not sure if Nitchman was on the boat before it washed ashore. A 2-day search by land and sea has so far not found any indication that Nitchman is in the water. Police are asking anyone with information to contact them. The BC Tree Fruits logo and trademarks have been sold to Penticton-based Wildstone Construction and an apple grower from Ontario. It paves the way for the brand to restart operations in the South Okanagan.
I'm really excited. I think it's a great endeavor, and we're really excited to make an impact in the community.
The $23 million deal was approved by the BC Supreme Court on Friday. The assets include equipment, packing facilities, other real estate, and the iconic green leaf logo. The name BC Tree Fruits will also stay the same. For farmers associated with the co-op, the sale is bittersweet.
It's a devastating blow. A lot of blood, sweat, and tears went into building this organization, and the properties. The farmers before us. We built this organization, and we basically squandered it.
BC Tree Fruits was founded as a cooperative in 1936, and over the decades, it has grown to represent more than 230 farms. The cooperative dissolved last year, citing extremely low fruit volumes, weather effects, and difficult market and financial conditions. To mark the start of Safe Boating Awareness Week, officials are urging recreational boaters to stay vigilant on the water this summer. Despite most boating-related deaths being preventable, Transport Canada says they continue to happen every year across Canada. Shivani Joshi reports.
Jason Crott with the Vancouver Fraser Port Authority says nearly 3,100 commercial vessels pass through Canada's largest port each year.
This makes the Port of Vancouver one of Canada's most beautiful yet complex waterways.
He says when boaters aren't prepared to share the waterways, it can pose a risk for everyone.
Large ships and fast-moving vessels have limited visibility. Don't assume they can see you. In fact, don't assume anyone can see you.
He says boaters should be aware of their surroundings and keep clear of floatplane zones.
In the majority of those cases where we know what happened, the person wasn't wearing a life jacket.
Danielle Wensauer with Transport Canada says there's one key step boaters can take to ensure their own personal safety.
We've normalized wearing helmets on bikes and seat belts on cars and harnesses for climbing. It's time we normalize wearing a properly fitted life jacket when boating.
People are also being reminded to check conditions, view the Port Authority's boater handbook, and abstain from alcohol while operating a watercraft. Shivani Joshi, CBC News, Vancouver.
And a reminder for commuters on the road, the Patello Bridge will remain shut down until Tuesday morning. TransLink says the closure is needed to install drainage and complete foundation work as part of the bridge replacement project. Drivers are being asked to take alternative routes like the Portman or Alex Fraser Bridge. The Patello Bridge will remain open for pedestrians and cyclists. It will reopen to cars at 5 a.m. on Tuesday. Weighing in at 1,100 pounds and 70 feet long, culinary students at Vancouver Island University have created the world's largest Nanaimo bar.
It is not the Victoria Bar. It is not the Saskatoon Bar. It is not the Ottawa Bar. It is the Nanaimo Bar.
The record-setting dessert was unveiled to the public on Saturday. The recipe includes 125 kilograms of butter, 91 kilograms of confectioner's sugar, 77 kilograms of graham cracker crumbs, and 68 kilograms of dark chocolate. Nanaimo Mayor Leonard Krog declared May 17th Nanaimo Bar Day in honor of the popular treat. Still to come is another strike at Canada Post looming. It might well be after a new report says the Crown Corporation is effectively bankrupt. Details next. A new report about Canada Post paints a bleak picture of the Crown Corporation's finances. It calls Canada Post effectively bankrupt and recommends an end to daily door-to-door mail delivery for homes. The 162-page report comes days before another potential strike by unionized workers. The report says the mail service should be allowed to hire part-time employees to work on the weekends. The Canadian Union of Postal Workers is reacting to that report, saying it is disappointed and has raised preliminary concerns with the Minister of Jobs and the Secretary of State for Labor. A union statement reads, in part, the union banned councillors, municipalities, international organizations, and the public took the time to research and send in thorough submissions in our support. All were dismissed. Instead, the report simply regurgitates Canada Post's proposals and positions. The union and Canada Post have until Thursday to reach an agreement or face possible job action. Police in Nova Scotia have launched a new search for two children who went missing earlier this month. Jack and Lily Sullivan disappeared from their home just over 2 weeks ago. Police are expanding the search into areas they haven't reached.
15 days after Jack and Lily Sullivan were reported missing from their home here in Lansdowne Station, search and rescue teams are back in the woods looking for any sign of the missing siblings. Roughly 100 officials from 5 different search and rescue teams are taking part, searching new areas they haven't looked at and revisiting other areas they've already combed through.
So some of the areas we search, we do what's called a hasty tasking, so it's very quick, and we'll send a more in-depth search team into the same area. But we're also expanding out into areas that we haven't really had boots on the ground in, just to get more areas covered off.
We haven't learned why exactly RCMP have asked search and rescue to resume their efforts, but we do know police have received more than 180 tips from the public and have interviewed dozens of people as part of their investigation. We don't know what exactly they've learned from those interactions, but we do know police have said previously they do not believe the children were abducted, but they haven't ruled out that this case could be suspicious. A case that has grabbed headlines around the world, one with so few answers, it's only led to more questions. Josh Hoffman, CBC News, Lansdowne Station.
Prime Minister Mark Carney has met with Ukraine's president in Rome. The Prime Minister is there ahead of Pope Leo's inaugural Mass tomorrow. Olivia Stevanovich reports.
Before world leaders gather in St. Peter's Square for the inaugural Mass of Pope Leo XIV, Prime Minister Mark Carney held a series of bilateral meetings, including his first face-to-face discussion with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. The two leaders discussed recent talks in Turkey between Russia and Ukraine. They didn't end in a ceasefire, but they did result in an agreement between the two countries to exchange prisoners. Zelensky told Carney that he's hopeful for this. Carney reiterated his commitment to Ukraine, Canada's commitment to Ukraine. He didn't spell out exactly what that looks like, but he did say that there can't be any peace unless Ukraine is fully involved and is fully supported. Zelensky, meanwhile, thanked Carney for that message. He invited the Prime Minister to Ukraine and urged Carney to keep pushing Russia.
Of course, we had to make more pressure on Russia, on Putin, to really make peace as quick as possible. And of course, unconditional ceasefire is very, very important. And that's why we need to pressure on him, more pressure, more sanctions.
U.S. President Donald Trump posted on social media that he plans to speak with Russian President Vladimir Putin and Zelensky separately on Monday in an effort to reach a ceasefire. This as Pope Leo offers the Vatican as a venue for future peace talks. It's unclear if those will take place, but Zelensky has accepted Carney's invitation to attend the G7 summit next month in Kananaskis, Alberta. Meetings that Carney is trying to set the stage for as he visits Rome this long weekend by meeting international leaders like Zelensky and Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni, who hosted the G7 last year. Olivia Stefanovic, CBC News, Vatican City.
Gaza authorities say Israeli airstrikes have killed more than 140 people over 24 hours between Friday and Saturday. Philip Lee Shannock has more.
Thousands of pro-Palestinian protesters rallied in central London to mark the anniversary of the Nakba, or catastrophe. That's what Palestinians call the 1948 war that led to the birth of the State of Israel and the loss of their land. An estimated 700,000 people were displaced to what is now the West Bank and Gaza Strip. This protester says hundreds of thousands are at risk there right now.
As a mother, as a woman, as a humanitarian, we need food to get in. We need the bombing to stop.
Aid workers say almost 1 million Palestinians are starving as humanitarian aid is kept from the enclave. Protests marking the 77th anniversary of the Nakba were held in cities around the world. Thousands marched past the Israeli embassy in Athens. It comes as Israel's defense forces escalate military operations in Gaza, killing at least 146 Palestinians over the past 24 hours, say local health authorities. Codenamed Gideon's Chariots, the offensive is aimed at seizing strategic areas of the Gaza Strip. This woman surveys the remains of her belongings in the Aqsa refugee camp. This is the 13th time we've been struck, she says. Where should we go if this is not safe? And again, the United Nations Secretary General, who is at the Arab League summit, called for an end to the Israeli blockade of aid into Gaza.
In Gaza, the situation of Palestinians is beyond description, beyond atrocious, and beyond inhumane. A policy of siege and starvation makes a mockery of international law.
U.S. President Donald Trump just returned from the Gulf region, where he suggested Gaza be declared a freedom zone. This after previously saying he'd like to redevelop the region into the Riviera of the Middle East. This former Israeli government advisor says Trump appears to be putting pressure on Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu.
Netanyahu needs to end the war. The only person that can make him end the war, is Donald Trump.
And he worries that with such an impulsive president, it's possible he'll get distracted by another issue, allowing the chances of a ceasefire to slip away. Philip Shannock, CBC News, Toronto.
Here we have a live shot of White Rock, a bit wet and breezy near the water today. Is that rain sticking around? I'll have your full forecast next. All right, it is time now to take a look at our weekend weather. Let's begin with a quick peek around the province tonight. Starting up in Fort St. John, lots of rain across the board, including in Fort St. John with a low of 6 overnight. Similar conditions in both Williams Lake and Prince George. A risk of thunderstorms in Kelowna with a low of 8 overnight. And on the island, a bit drier, but similar conditions with overcast and 8 overnight. Heading into tomorrow, a risk of thunderstorms in places like Dease Lake and Fort St. John. In Kelowna, 14 degrees is your high for tomorrow with a little bit of scattered showers, and much clearer on the island with a high of 16 and a mix of sun and clouds in Victoria for tomorrow, 13, a bit more overcast in Tofino. Now, we did have a severe thunderstorm for parts of the lower mainland earlier today, but that system seems to be moving east, and so that warning is no longer in place. But we did see some pretty crazy clouds in the sky in certain areas, and it brought with it some rain. That rain is continuing into Sunday with a high of 16 and sticking around for the next few days. And speaking of rain, it didn't dampen northern BC's largest Vaisakhi celebration in Prince George today. Typically, the Spring Festival is held in April, but in Prince George, organizers wait until May for warmer weather. It also gave residents a chance to attend one of the world's largest Vaisakhi celebrations in Surrey last month. Organizers say this year's event now attracts about 5,000 people from across BC. That is your late news for Saturday, May 17th. Thanks so much for joining us tonight. To keep up to date with all the latest news, head to our website at cbc.ca/BC. We'll see you tomorrow.